Hi, my name is Zara, and today we're going to be making cake pops. So what you'll need is you're going to need any basic cake, and today I'm going to be making vanilla cake pops. So I'm using a vanilla cake, and you'll need a frosting that'll coordinate well with it. So I'm using vanilla frosting. If you are using red velvet cake, then I would recommend cream cheese frosting. And with chocolate cake, a lot of different frostings go, but a lot of people go with cream cheese. So first what you're going to do is you're going to want to cut the cake into 4, and you're just going to be crumbling it. And so to crumble it, you'll just put it over a bowl, and you'll just rub it with your fingers until you have a lot of cake crumbs, and so you'll just keep going. And if you have some chunks, that's fine because you'll be mixing it a little bit later. And it's always a good idea to keep a reserve of about a handful of crumbs, because if you find that as you're dipping the cake pops they're falling off the stick, then that probably means you added too much frosting and it's too soggy. So you should keep about a handful aside, and that should solve that problem. Okay, so now that that's blended a bit, you're going to want to add frosting, and just add a little bit as you go, because you can always add more but you can't take any out. So for this you're probably going to want to use about 1/4 to 1/2 cup. This was an 8-inch cake. So I used an 8-inch cake, and for that I'm probably going to be adding 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of frosting, and I'm using vanilla frosting once again. So you'll just want to add it a dollop at a time. You want to blend it until it's well incorporated. And any of the big chunks, like from the crust, you'll want to especially make sure that they're fine. A lot of people, when they make cake pops, they take out the crust, they cut off the top layer. Personally, I like to leave it in. Doesn't really make a difference in the taste, I've found, and you get a little more batter, so no harm in leaving it in. A lot of people just use their hands for this step, which is probably a little easier. And you'll keep going until you have about almost a Play-Doh consistency, but a little bit drier. And you'll want to see some crumbs, so you don't want to put in so much frosting that you can't have any crumbs coming out. So I just need a little bit more. Okay, so that should be good. Feels about right. And as you can see, it's like almost a Play-Doh consistency, sort of like dried Play-Doh. That's sounds gross. You'll want it to be a little bit drier than Play-Doh consistency. Okay, so next what you're going to do is you're going to take a tray and line it with aluminum foil. Okay, and you're going to want to line a tray with aluminum foil. And this is when you're going to start making the balls that'll be the cake pops. So remember with this batter, you can always cover it with saran wrap and refrigerate it. So if you don't want to make all of them now, if you want to save some for a different occasion, you can put them in the fridge and they last for a couple weeks. So what you'll do is you'll take, you can use like a melon baller if you want the size to be consistent, but I just kind of eyeball it. Take like a good sized ball, and I take about that much, and just roll it in your hands until it's round. Keep doing that. And you don't want to make them too big, because if so, then they're just going to fall off the stick. One of the biggest gripes that people have when they make cake pops for the first time is that they fall off the stick as you're dipping them. And there's a few reasons for that. It could be too much frosting, too little frosting, or that they're too big. Those are the main reasons. Or that the chocolate or whatever you're dipping it in is too thick, in which case you can use canola oil or some unflavored oil to thin it out a bit more. So the best size for them is about 1 inch to 1.5 inches in diameter. Okay, so now that we have the cake balls ready, we made about 30 from this batch. We're going to chill them in the freezer for about 20 minutes. So you can also use Baker's white chocolate. This is absolutely the best stuff that you can use to coat cake pops. It's really soft, very perfect consistency. It tastes awesome, but the only pitfall is that it's pretty expensive. I think this small pack is like $4, $3 or $4, whereas you can get almost 1.5 pounds of almond bark for like $3. So today I'm actually going to be using chocolate almond bark. I think it's a good contrast with the vanilla cake. So I've already cut it. I'm going to melt it now. Okay, so now I'm going to be taking the cake balls out of the freezer. And here we've got them. So now we're going to be dipping the lollipop sticks in some chocolate and putting them into the cake ball. This is a very important step because it holds it all together. If you don't do this, then most likely it's just going to fall off when you're dipping. So we're going to go ahead and do that for all of them. So now you're going to be dipping the cake balls, and if they lost a little bit of their shape while they were being frozen, you can just sort of, I don't know, reform them with your finger. So what you're going to do is you'll be dipping it, and do that kind of quickly. Some people choose to double dip it, if you wanted to cut down the calories, I suppose that would be one reason to single dip, but you don't eat cake pops to get skinny, so you might as well make them good. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to single dip, although normally I would not do this. So I'm just going to spin it around a few times, as I'm doing here, and then to get the excess chocolate off, to get that last little drop off, you can just tap your wrist a bit. It's better than shaking the actual cake pop, because some people like to shake the actual thing, but it's probably just going to fly off the stick. I've tried it, it doesn't work. It's better to be a little patient and wait for the last drop to fall. Okay, so now you're just going to stick that onto your styrofoam, like so. And sometimes I like to make a pattern, like a heart or something, for fun. And you're just going to repeat the process for all of them. So now we're finished with the dipping, and I'm going to show how to add a little swirl at the top. So you can just take one of these piping bags. I like the Wilton disposable ones, and I just put in some candy melts in here and microwaved them and snipped off the tip. So you're going to want to test it first. So I want to do a couple test runs just to make sure it's the right amount of melted goodness, if that's a word. Okay, so you're just going to take it over the top and run it back and forth a few times. And remember that the quicker you go, the finer the swirl, which makes it look a bit more professional. So you'll want to go sort of fast. And adding these gives it a nice touch. Sometimes I like to do different colors. It adds an energy to the cake pops. And if they drip off the side, then you can just clean them. And of course you can do different patterns. So now you have your cake pops, and they're all done. Sorry that I didn't fill in the middle. I didn't have quite enough dough for it. But that is how you do it. So it is sort of a long process. So what I like to do usually is I like to split it up amongst a couple days. Just to reiterate, you can make the cake and then crumble it. Save the crumbles with the frosting, let the dough cool for a day rather, and then the next day you can make the balls and then put those in the fridge again and then do your dipping and decorating. And that is how you make cake pops. Thank you for watching, and I plan to put up more baking videos soon, including some new ideas for cake pops and cakes and cupcakes and more. So if you could please subscribe, that would be very appreciated. And if you have any questions about the video today or have requests for future videos, then feel free to write it in the comments and I'll definitely attend to them. Thank you.